You mentioned about like trying to make tier two and challengers a little bit more stable,
Right.
which is not the words you kind of used in the past.
I think it's important to put some things in perspective here, and I know that's not a popular thing to say publicly, but I mean, it's fine. I'd rather say the truth than, give anyone false hopes.
Partnership League. One of the things recently that's been levied a lot of criticism and discussion is the count of the matches the teams are playing, which is a minimum of 12. Why is 12 games the right amount? The teams from South America that are competing in Challengers in Tier 2 are just getting way worse practice than the Tier 2 NA teams because they can compete against the best South American teams and the best North American teams.
O mercado noturno está ativo no Valorant, e se diferente de mim você teve alguma sorte e vê alguma skin que você quer, eu vou te passar a cal para você comprar essa skin com mais desconto ainda. Te apresento o Rei dos Coins, lá você pode personalizar o valor ideal para o seu Valorant Points, o valor que você tá precisando para comprar aquela skin, e ainda ganhar cashback em cima desse valor. Não perde tempo e acesse o reidoscoins.com.br. Fala galera, tudo bem com vocês? Nessa quarta-feira, o Léo Faria, brasileiro que é líder global do Valorant, participou do PLATCHAT, que é um dos maiores podcasts sobre Valorant, e debateu bastante sobre o cenário geral do Valorant atual. Separamos alguns trechos aqui pra gente conferir. Mas antes, peço que confiram se estão inscritos aqui no canal. Mais de 50% das pessoas que assistem nossos vídeos não são inscritas. Então já confere aí e também deixa aquele like nesse vídeo.
You mentioned about like trying to make tier two and challengers a little bit more stable,
Right.
which is not the words you kind of used in the past. Yeah, what is the like contingencies?
Great question. Before I answer that, let me just use this opportunity to clarify the stability part, because I mean, it was not the first time I worded something poorly, and I appreciate the opportunity to kind of clarify that. Look, I think stability is not the same as sustainability, right? Of course we want tier 2 to be sustainable. Of course we want those teams to be incentivized to invest and players to be able to, put their careers and, invest and try to go pro and try to get to the top and to do it in a sustainable way, obviously. What I meant when I say we're not looking for stability is that what we saw a lot of teams, NTOs asking is like, they wanted essentially challengers to become a closed league. They're like, well, I don't want to risk getting relegated. And that just goes opposite direction of what the purpose of challengers is, which is creating mobility, right? We want the best teams to get to challengers and eventually get to international leagues, and like that up and down is a big part of the reason why that exists. So we want it to be sustainable, but stable is a different thing. So anyway, I think it's important to clarify. But look, yeah, man, look, I think none of us here look at challengers in 23 and think that it was a smashing hit, like it was a big success. It was not. We definitely have work to do there, and we are putting a lot of effort into making that whole scene, in fact, everything that's not tier 1, like better and more sustainable, and that includes challengers, that includes game changers, that includes Premier, and that connection and how teams and pros flow upwards. We have a big challenge with the calendar, of course, and how everything comes together in a way that makes sense and don't kind of force teams to choose to compete in one thing or the other. So yeah, I mean, we're making a bunch of changes this year. We're excited to see how they go, right? Everything from like the affiliate system to the changes on the calendar and all of that stuff. But we are already thinking about changes we are going to do for 24. Not just thinking about it. We're actively working on the 2025 plan. And we might do some more drastic changes because I think they are necessary. So I'm excited there. But I think, look, I think it's important to put some things in perspective here, and I know that's not a popular thing to say publicly, but I mean, it's fine. I'd rather say the truth than, give anyone false hopes. I think the first thing we need to like get alignment on is what is success for challengers, right? And to answer that question, you kind of need to think like, why do we do it in the first place? Why does it exist? And in our minds, it comes down to two things: accessibility and development, right? Accessibility meaning we want to give anyone who wants to go pro in Valorant a very clear path and that upwards mobility, right? The easy thing to do, like many esports do, is like just create an academy league, right? We would be operating 4 of those instead of 23. No ascension, no promotion, and just stop there. That would be the easy answer. We believe in accessibility, both for teams and for players. So that's one. And the other thing is development. It's like it's giving teams and pros, of course, a stage to kind of develop themselves and to hone their skills and to prove that they deserve to be at the top, because there's just a huge gap in between someone playing a ranked game and then making it to the biggest stages in the VCT. So that layer is very important to kind of build the future talent for our sport. So if you look at challengers from that perspective, accessibility and development, it's actually kind of working well. I mean, we of course are seeing 4 new teams joining our international leagues this year. We are seeing over 60 players. Almost 40% of players playing Tier 1 this year came from Tier 2, from challengers, right, in 24. So if you look at from that perspective, accessibility and development, it is working. We're seeing teams and players coming upwards, and it brings fresh blood to the leagues, and it makes things more interesting. But if you look at it from the perspective of, I'm a player, I didn't make it a Tier 1, and I'm looking at challengers as the place where I'm going to play in a big tournament with big audience and big prize pools, then yeah, challengers is not delivering that. And from that perspective, it's not successful. And the nuance there is, we know that for challengers to fulfill that role of accessibility and development, it needs a baseline of success from an audience and viewership perspective. Otherwise, the league won't stand on its own, right? So it needs to be that. But the harsh reality here is that our sport simply don't have the scale to support multiple levels of competition with like incredibly high viewership, right? I see people pointing at like English football, like, hey, look, like you have the Premier League, you have Championship, you have like 7 layers of professional sport. Why can't we have that? And I mean, we just don't have the scale. Valorant's one of the most popular video games in the world right now, and we have tens of millions of players. Football, if you go to FIFA's website, like they talk about percentage of the world population as their fan base. They have like 4 billion people, right? So if you watch a match of like the Tier 2 football, they have enough of an audience to make that league very, very successful, which we don't. And I think, you know, it is quite challenging, especially for pros, because if you think about it, we design our sport in a way that's, I mean, honestly, like top heavy, right? That was like one of the fundamental decisions we made when we designed everything, to focus on quality, not quantity, right? We have 4 international leagues, not 15. We have 40 partner teams, not hundreds. We have 3 global events, not 10. Like that focus on doing few things really well, I think was very fundamental. And we have 40 teams, 5 players each, 250 seats at the top layer of the sport. There's no question that there are more than 250 Tier 1 caliber players out there, right? And they're all like, well, I can't make it an international league. Where do I go? Like, I want to be in a league that's successful as well. And that mismatch of expectations is what creates a lot of challenge and a lot of friction. So look, we're working very hard to kind of solve this problem. It's a very hard problem. I wish more people would understand that's like, it's us, Riot plus community against the problem. It's not community versus Riot. Like, we're very incentivized to make this work and make it happen. It's just a really hard problem. But again, we're iterating on the design. We're cooking some big changes for next year that hopefully we'll be able to do. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I hard agree with one of the first things you said. I think is really important. Not creating challengers or Tier 2 as a second franchise league. I despise that. I already was very much against how many teams were sort of retaining spots throughout the league last year. I wanted to see more teams be able to qualify, because the way the schedule was set up, teams were just disincentivized to play throughout the year, essentially just give up after the beginning, which is really bad. And it also disincentivized Game Changers teams from being outside of Game Changers, because you know, you end just outside the qualifier, you just sacrificed being on your more likely chance of being on a signed team in Game Changers, which is one of the problems with the current state of challengers. And the problem with that being an open system, though, is how do you incentivize more organizations to be interested in having teams signed in challengers? And, you know, I'm not talking excessive salary here, but signed enough that players can feel comfortable focusing on playing, because that's sort of that's a stopgap on Game Changers players being able to convert over. You know, you're leaving the safety of actually getting paid to try to compete in a league where less people are getting paid but is the stepping stone to getting to tier 1 like that. That's just a clear stopping point where, that's an extremely tough and risky decision to make. So what is the plan to incentivize orgs to actually participate in challengers, which would, fix some of these issues?
Yeah, look, I think what we heard from, look, we work on this plan for, I think, almost 2 years before we shipped like what the VCT looks like in the partnership leagues and whatnot. And we had a bunch of assumptions, right? We have a bunch of things we believed that would be true, that would make the whole system work. One of them was that organizations will look at Ascension and say, like, hey, this is such a gigantic opportunity. I want to invest. And what we learned is that a lot of organizations look at that opportunity and they look at the risk profile of that investment. They're like, not worth it, because the chances of ascending are quite slim. So I think that's one of the big challenges we have, is how to make that investment more viable. And I think there are really only two paths here. One is we make challengers on its own better, meaning there's a bigger opportunity there for, again, like more audiences, more revenue opportunities for TOs and teams to kind of stand on its own, or we put a bigger carrot in front of them, using Josh's analogy here, which could mean a bunch of things, right? So like there are really two solutions. The thing that is hard though is like I think when I hear people talking about the topic, usually the solutions that they ideate are like creating stability for tier 2 by removing from tier 1, right? Some people say, "Well, you should just go like full promo relegation. That will solve the problem." That would solve this problem. That would create a complete different set of problems, right? The number one challenge facing esports right now is sustainability, right? By having a partnership league, we know for a fact that we can offer a select number of teams that stability necessary to have a league and to have a sport. So, there are, again, a number of solutions. A common one that I also usually see is like, why don't you simply like do a digital item for challengers and help those teams and those players? Which I think it makes sense on paper, but in reality wouldn't work for a number of reasons, right? First of all, that product probably wouldn't commercialize well.
I mean, you guys have you've already said like we don't even know how the tier 1 bundles are going to do.
That's right. Look, man, I mean, not enough people open their browsers for free to watch challengers. Why would they open their wallets and spend money? It wouldn't commercialize well, right? Like, there simply isn't enough of an audience there to be monetized. And so that's one. The other thing is things like Champions monetize well because we create such a gigantic momentum around it, right? There's like a whole event and a whole campaign leading to it. And we clear the store of any other big products to kind of focus on that. So like we don't have that for challengers. And I think the biggest problem, which is a gigantic issue for challengers, is it's just the sheer number of teams and players, right? So imagine a product that isn't monetizing very well, and now you have to divide it by 230 teams, over 1,000 players. People would get pennies, you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be enough money to move the needle. So I think there are a bunch of ideas out there, but again, it's just a really hard problem to solve. But it comes down to hopefully make challengers better viewership, or putting a bigger carrot there. And again, we're working on things on both fronts.
The Americas specifically, I have concern, and I know other folks from the South American scene have concern that because the event is being hosted in Los Angeles, the teams from South America that are competing in challengers in Tier 2 are just getting way worse practice than the Tier 2 NA teams, because they can compete against the best South American teams and the best North American teams. And it's one of the reasons now even, it has effects now, but I think this is going to have even longer effects that are very, very negative. But you're seeing it now with some of the South American teams. It's like, really? They're recycling these guys that just haven't really done anything? There's no other... And then you go down and look at who they could possibly get, and it's like, well, I guess there really aren't that many great options for upcoming players right now. But it's going to be tough for players to actually make their way to the top where, South American teams would consider them, because there's no competition to scrim against.
That's right.
Is this something that's being actively discussed, trying to think of solutions to this? Because it seems like something that could get out of hand, and that global aspect of the game could be sacrificed if we're looking a couple of years down the line.
Yep, absolutely. That's a really good point. Look, another hard problem to solve, right? I think we see similar problems in like Western Europe and Eastern Europe, right? Teams in Turkey, they can practice with partner teams in Berlin. You know, it's like it is a real problem. There's not an easy solution there, because if you think about it, if the league was in São Paulo or in Santiago in Chile instead of LA, then we would have the same problems, but the opposite, right? Like, so then North American teams wouldn't be able to practice. So like, who do you benefit and penalize? Like, there's no perfect solution. Our dream when we started designing the VCT some 2.5 years ago was to have a rotating league. Can we do like a split in each location, which is just not viable. We spent like a good amount of time trying to make that happen.
Back to the bloody Overwatch League. I know it's not viable.
That's right. That's right. And it's like not only about Riot, because of course we would have to set up studios and like all the infrastructure, but it's not viable for teams, right? When they come and establish themselves in a city, they have to establish a legal entity, and they have to put like a whole apparatus to obey like labor laws, and they have to build infrastructure and practice facilities. Have a itinerary league is just is viable. So again, really hard problem to solve. We are actively debating it. One of our hopes is that as we redesign challengers, we could have somewhat of a more open circuit style ecosystem that allow teams to play tournaments in any regions within a territory. So if you're a team in the Americas, you could be playing tournaments in North America and South America and Central America. So that's kind of one of the ways we're thinking about the problem. But I mean, it's one of those that are like there's no perfect solution there. And we're open to ideas, like anyone. If there is like, you know, we're always open to thoughts and feedback. But we're working on.
In the partnership league, one of the things recently that's been levied a lot of criticism and discussion is the count of the matches the teams are playing, which is a minimum of 12. Why is 12 games the right amount?
Yeah, so that's a great topic. I'm glad we're talking about it.
Prepared for this one.
No, I just have a lot to say, and I have learned that Twitter is not the right avenue for those conversations. And if I'm not saying it there, where I'm going to say it. So I'm glad we're having the conversation. So look, we had a long debate about like that exactly, like what is the ideal floor, like how much should we offer for every team and whatnot. I think it really comes down to one important factor, which is if you look at the way we design the sport. We have a lot of different stakeholders, right? We have players, and then we have teams, and we have tournament organizers, and we have sponsors, and then we have player associations. There are many different people with different expectations and things they want out of the sport. So you can't please everyone. So who do you choose? And the razor for our decisions has always been fans. Fans come first. Whatever fans want, that's what we're going to do. Because without fans, there's no sport, right? Without people watching Valorant, there's no business for Riot. There's no business for teams. There's no business for pros. So a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times when we make a decision that is better for fans, it's not necessarily what's better for players, right? We saw that happening last year with Lock-In. People are like, well, 4 players are going to have to travel all the way to Brazil and play 1 match and get knocked out. Because that's their fucking job, right? For fans, though, it's very exciting. You're watching matches. Every match counts. High stakes. So, yeah, many times, more often than not, we're going to make decisions that are better for fans, not necessarily better for teams and for players. And I think that's just a perfect example of that. There are many reasons why people watch sports, right? And we have a very professional, quite sophisticated team working on research and analytics and viewership analytics to kind of try to tell us what those things are. We categorize them in 6 key motivators and why people watch esports. Fandom is one of them, and I saw a lot of people saying like, that line, people want to watch the best teams play, got a reaction, and some people say, I don't want to watch the best teams, I want to watch my team. 6 motivators, fandom is of course one of them. Fandom is an important part of any sport, but it's not the main reason why people watch the VCT. I would say it's not the main reason why people watch esports, right? So, I think people watch for the most part because of entertainment, right? Because they want to watch the big matches. They want to watch the elimination matches, the qualification matches. They want to watch the big plays, the flick shots, the funny moments, like someone being knifed. They want to, like in tournaments like Champions, they want to watch the opening ceremony. That is the main driver. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the point. We're going to prioritize fans. At the end of the day, we are growing the number of matches, right? In 2024, we have more matches than we had in 2021, 2022, 2023, all previous years. If you're only watching your international leagues and global events, there are over 100 show days in 2024. If you watch multiple leagues, then that number is and challengers and game changers, that number is a lot higher. And as you know, I've talked about this a number of times. We're always concerned about viewer fatigue, which is a big deal. And the final thing I think it's important to talk about is, if you look at the way we designed the calendar and all the competitions, every tournament, every competition in esports, the viewership chart, it's like a smiley face. It starts high with a peak because of the novelty. People want to see teams playing for the first time and the new rosters. And then it dips at the middle of the tournament. And then as you start to get to resolution, elimination, playoffs, or not, it ramps up again because, of course, people want to know who's going to win. And when you stretch any of those blocks of competition, you're actually stretching the valley, not the peaks, right? So I saw a lot of people asking, like, why can't we have 2 full round robins, like a 5-week stage instead of a 10-week stage? Well, if you stretch it to 10 weeks, you have a long deep. So our answer to that is we focus on shorter cycles, right? We want to have a bunch of shorter cycles. So we want to have like kickoff 2 weeks, and then you have Masters Madrid 2 weeks, and then you have stage 5 weeks, and then you have Shanghai 2 weeks, and then you have stage 2 5 weeks. You know what I mean? Like shorter cycles that gives more trophy lift opportunities, more peaks, more re-entry points for fans. Because think about it, if it's like a 10-week stage and you're a fan and you've missed the first 4 and you're like, I probably missed almost half, I just won't watch this stage at all. So shorter cycles are good. Like, I think especially this generation, especially folks who watch Valorant Esports, like I think the people just don't have the patience to sit through something incredibly long. So we focus on shorter cycles, and because of that, it's just very hard for us to accommodate a lot of matches for all the teams. And yeah, we focus on the best teams playing more. We ideated with a bunch of formats. I am personally, and I know a lot of people are not huge fans of round robins, because I mean you're just seeing like match after match. But it is very good in a way that's very equitable. You see all of the matchups at least once in the season. We know in advance and we can plan around them, right? We can plan marketing and promotion. Last year we did a lot of home media in the subway in Paris to promote Vitality and K-Corp. Round robins are good on that sense, but they are not particularly exciting, right? Because again, people want to watch the qualification matches. And we even thought about what if instead of league play, we had more tournament-based competition regionally, which also had its own challenges. I thought it could be a bit repetitive if you go from tournament style and then into tournament style at Masters. So we chose to go with round robins. We also have some very practical constraints there with logistics and timing, and how do you increase the number of matches per day? Do you increase the number of days per week? Do you increase the number of weeks? The only viable solution there, which we explored, would be going to BO1s, which we don't particularly love because map selection matters a lot in Valorant.
Yeah, don't go to BO1s.
Yes. So
No explanation needed.
Yeah, I'm not going to justify that statement. Just don't go to BO1s. And I think the other part of what you're saying too is you said that the shorter stage stuff is really effective, and from the perspective of the way that you're describing it, from a viewership perspective, I'm sure it is. From other people's perspective, for example, from a competitive integrity, are we going to get for sure the best teams out the end of it? It's what you said before. Every system has pros and cons to it and compromises that you have to make when you decide on it. So it's not like this is the best system, but it has benefits and it does have downsides. And that to me is one of the biggest downsides this year, is that because things are so condensed, kickoff and the 5-week splits, it is entirely possible that stuff like strength of schedule and stuff like You know, whether you match up against someone in that single elim format. It looks like Fnatic Na'Vi could very easily happen in the single elim portion over in EMEA. I'm sure there's many other things that could occur in the other regions too. But those are the current downsides for this year, despite the fact that like it's going to be shorter, the viewership's going to be higher expected. I agree.
And look, we're gonna see. Yep. We're going to see how it goes, and we're going to adjust for next year. I think if there is a change I would do right now, it's probably on the kickoff format. I think there's definitely an opportunity to make it slightly longer, maybe make playoffs double elimination. I think we finally have more time to work with in 2025, with the season starting in January, ending later in the year. So we have more to work with. I think in 23/4, we had just an unfortunate reality of a bunch of things happening at the same time, and we wanted to give teams in China the same space and time we gave everyone else to kind of accommodate and set up for the new league. So we didn't have a lot of time for kickoff. So next year things are going to be a little bit better. But look, I think just to touch on one final point here, which is I think one of the biggest challenges of running a sport like the VCT. You look at teams and players. They have many different perspectives, right? And all their perspectives are valid, right? Of course, for a team who don't expect to qualify for global events, of course, they'll be like, there are not enough matches. For a team that will probably qualify for all global events, they will probably be like, there's too much to play. I am tired and I am overworked. Of course, for a team that didn't make it to the partnership, they'll be like, the partnership league sucks. And all those perspectives are valid from their own point of view. The challenge we have is we have to look at all of these different perspectives and make the decision that's best for the sport. And there's just no pleasing everyone. So like, yeah, we designed the system, and from, again, a team that will probably play the minimum number of matches, their perspective is this is not enough, and we understand. But again,
on the no pleasing everyone, I just want to reference something that you had said in the answer to the original match count question, which was that you said kind of generally that this was for the fans. Now what's going to happen is people are going to say, well, I'm a fan, and that's why I want more matches, right? So when you say that, to just get to the specifics, to kind of, be very clear about it, you're speaking about the majority of the fans as per what the data is showing. That's what you're referencing when you make that statement.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.